Hi, and welcome to the 7th episode of the Electric Playground, a show that will take you inside the world of video games like no other channel has ever done before. I'm your host, Noah, and thanks for tuning in. For this special episode, we're going to be going back to the roots of the original episodes, where I'll be playing songs from the fighting game genre. The fighting game genre is one of my favorite genres in video games because I love the competitive nature between two players with different mind games and strategies performing incredible special moves with their characters on screen. We're going to be listening to music from my favorite fighting game series from Killer Instinct, Mortal Kombat, Street Fighter EX, and more. And also, we have a very special guest host with us tonight. He's my sweet mate and a fighting game fan, Joseph Nolan. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, Joseph?
You might recognize my voice. I was Tuesday Night with the Nut one year, and the consecutive year I was your Midnight Cup of Joe.
Yeah, that was, I believe, last semester, was it?
Yes, last semester I was the Midnight Cup of Joe.
And we'll also be doing a review towards the end of the show, so stay tuned because it's going to be a very, very exciting show tonight. So first on the list is Killer Instinct. Developed by Rare and Microsoft Studios, Killer Instinct began with an arcade release in 1994. Killer Instinct and its sequel were released for the Super Nintendo, Game Boy, and Nintendo 64. In June 2013, Microsoft unveiled the next generation installments of Killer Instinct, which took the fans by surprise after a nearly 20-year hiatus. Now, last night, Joseph and I got a chance to compete in the Killer Instinct tournament in West Farms, Hartford, Connecticut Mall to celebrate the launch of the Xbox One. Killer Instinct's fighting mechanics are fueled of combos that are different from other fighting games, and these include openers, doubles, linkers, and enders. The first track that we're going to be listening to from Killer Instinct is the Killer Instinct theme. The Killer Instinct theme remains as one of the most memorable themes in fighting game history. This track is the remix from the next generation installment of Killer Instinct on the Xbox One. According to the composer Mick Gordon, being a fan of the original paid tribute to not only the original composers, but to the fans as well. Joseph, what were your thoughts on last night's tournament? Because last night we had a Killer Instinct tournament, and you got your chance to play it for the first time. What were your impressions?
For it being my first time doing any competition, in this case for Killer Instinct, it's a very interesting experience. There's high caliber opponents, as well as there was some low caliber ones. Unfortunately, I met with one of the high caliber ones in the first round, but it was a good experience. The gameplay was very well. The new controller is a great improvement. The button's a little more ergonomic to your hands, and the new D-pad it's a great improvement, let's just say, because I enjoy this D-pad a lot better now.
Yeah, the D-pad is definitely an improvement, especially for fighting games, and because Killer Instinct is a launch title for the Xbox One, I think Microsoft had in mind that we really have to improve the responsiveness of the D-pad, because the D-pad is very, very important in fighting games. So this is the Killer Instinct theme composed by Mick Gordon.
Killer
And that was the theme to Killer Instinct. It's a really great nod to the original theme that was released back in the arcades in 1994 and the Super Nintendo as well. Now, up next is another theme from Killer Instinct, which is Jago. Jago is a Tibetan warrior monk whose playstyle is similar to that of Ryu from Street Fighter, where he has a fireball called Indokyukin and a Tiger Fury similar to a Shoryuken Tiger Uppercut. This theme is a remix of the original Jago theme from the original Killer Instinct. Enjoy. This is once again composed by Mick Gordon.
Jago.
And that was the theme for Jago. Up next is Virtua Fighter. Virtua Fighter is a series of 3D competitive fighting games created by Sega AM2 and designer Yu Suzuki in 1993 and received 4 main sequels since then. So this year marks the 20th anniversary of the Virtua Fighter series, but unfortunately Sega hasn't really announced any plans for a 6th installment or at least a 20-year celebration of the franchise. The first game is widely recognized as the first 3D fighting game ever released. The basic gameplay involves 2 combatants needing to win 2 of 3 rounds, each round being 30 seconds long or more. If a character is knocked out or falls out of the ring, the opponent wins the round. The first song that we're going to be listening to is Black Moon Cat. Black Moon Cat was the theme for Sarah Bryant in Virtua Fighter 2, who is a practitioner of Jeet Kune Do. In later installments of the series, her fighting style was altered into a general mix of mixed martial arts, starting with Virtua Fighter 4. She's also a guest character in Dead or Alive 5 and Dead or Alive 5 Ultimate. So apparently, Tecmo approached the team at Sega AM2 and asked, hey, would you guys mind if we have your characters as part of our release for Dead or Alive 5? And they turned out really, really great. It's sort of like taking a step towards Virtua Fighter 3. That game was basically the first Virtua Fighter game to have multi-tiered arenas, similar to Tekken 4. So Black Moon Cat is composed by Akiko Hashimoto. Enjoy. And that was the theme for Sarah Brant, who was one of the characters in Virtua Fighter. Up next is a song called Evolution. Virtua Fighter 4 Evolution was the updated version of Virtua Fighter 4, released in 2003 for the PlayStation 2 and the arcades. The PlayStation 2 version featured all new balance update changes to the characters, as well as additional modes which included players rising to the ranks in Quest Mode. Quest Mode was kind of similar to Soul Calibur's Weapons Master Mode. A little trivia is that the console version of the latest installment of the Virtua Fighter series, called Virtua Fighter 5 Final Showdown, plays this track during the mode select screen. Enjoy. This is composed by Yusuke Takeda. Alright, and that was Evolution from Virtua Fighter 4 Evolution, and if you pick up and download Virtua Fighter 5 Final Showdown, you can hear that track in the main menu. Up next is Capcom vs. SNK. In the year 2000 and 2002, fighting game giants Capcom and SNK did the impossible, pit their most iconic fighters from Street Fighter and King of Fighters against each other. This is Capcom's initial fighting game entry into the crossover series. Playing like a traditional fighting game, Capcom vs. SNK includes a ratio system in which variable-sized teams are built from characters of different strengths, and a groove system in which players can choose between two variations of super meters. The first song that we're going to listen to is This Is True Love Makin', one of the more popular tracks from Capcom vs. SNK 2 Mark of the Millennium. The arena takes place in a rainy evening in London. A double-decker bus passes through the arena with the flag of Great Britain hanging from the building behind the fighters. Composed by Satoshi Issei, this is True Love Makin'.
Love
And that was This Is True Love Makin'. Up next is Stimulation. Stimulation is another great track from Capcom vs. SNK 2. The arena takes place in the Crimson Sunset rooftops of New York City, where a helicopter flies above the characters. This arena also has very, very good use of dynamic lighting effects as well. Even though, despite the fact that the characters themselves are rendered in 2D and animated in 2D, the backgrounds itself are really, really detailed. It's composed by Satoshi Ise. This is Stimulation.
So listen closely, approach me, suckers mostly. Most try to treat me like greater than toast me, impossible. I cut a sucker in small chunks, make more rhymes than Michael Jordan makes slams. I'm slow, prerogative. Mix a lyric like the bass with the treble. Take a deep breath, getting funky as my lungs release a solid rhyme. Cause the switch is on the release. Slacking, never stop so I continue on. With the first word is white, word is born. I made your imperfection out of indulgent fantasy. Take a mile and it's dark. Like me. So listen closely, approach me. Sucker closely. Don't try to treat me like greater than toast me, impossible. I cut a sucker in small chunks, make more rhymes than Michael Jordan makes slams. I'm slow, prerogative. Closely, approach me, suckers mostly. Most try to treat me like greater than toast me, impossible. I cut a sucker in small chunks, make more rhymes than Michael Jordan makes slams. I'm slow, prerogative. On a mission, taking knowledge on a different level. Mix a lyric like the bass with the treble. Take a deep breath, getting funky as my lungs release a solid rhyme. Cause the switch is on the release. Slacking, never stop so I continue on. With the first word is white, word is born. I made your imperfection out of indulgent fantasy. Take a mile and it's dark. Like me. So listen closely, approach me. Suckers mostly. Don't try to treat me like greater than toast me, impossible. I cut a sucker in small chunks, make more rhymes than Michael Jordan makes slams. I'm slow, prerogative. Listen closely, approach me. Suckers mostly. Most try to treat me like greater than toast me, impossible. I cut a sucker in small chunks, make more rhymes than Michael Jordan makes slams.
And that was Stimulation. It's one of my favorite tracks from Capcom vs. SNK 2. Here's a little trivia, actually. Last month, Capcom re-released Capcom vs. SNK 2 for the PlayStation 2 Classics for the PlayStation Network. So do yourself a favor and go and check it out. You can actually play that game as an emulator on the PS3. Unfortunately, they don't have plans to re-release an HD version, even though that would have been very, really cool, or at least do a sequel to Capcom vs. SNK, because those two games, the first game and the second game, were awesome games. Okay, so the Electric Playground will be right back with these short messages. And welcome back to the Electric Playground. Up next is Mortal Kombat Armageddon. Developed and released by Midway in 2006, Mortal Kombat Armageddon was the culmination of all the Mortal Kombat games and the final chapter of the Mortal Kombat storyline that brought back all 60-plus characters from the previous games into one big epic game that contained an extensive creative fighter mode that allowed players to create and personalize their own fighters, moves, and fighting styles, as well as a revamped conquest mode. This was also the very first game that allowed players to even use their creative fighters against other people online as well. The first track that we're going to be listening to from Mortal Kombat Armageddon is Meteor Storm. Meteor Storm was an arena where the characters are pitted on a circular platform with fiery meteors falling and crashing nearby, constantly while the combatants do battle underneath the vile sky. This arena is said to be a remake of both the Pit 2 from Mortal Kombat 2 and the Wind Arena from Mortal Kombat 4 merged into one. This is also one of my favorite tracks from the game. And also, Mortal Kombat Armageddon featured the creative fatality system, where basically every single character had a unique creative fatality animation. And this was also particularly well received by the fans. So instead of just, doing forward, down, toward, and then pressing a button and you watch the show, this was a lot more interactive. So this was also another really new feature in Mortal Kombat Armageddon. So this is Meteor Storm, composed by Dan Fortin. And that was Meteor Storm from Mortal Kombat Armageddon. The next song we're going to be listening to from the Mortal Kombat series is Armory. The Armory was an arena from the latest installment in the Mortal Kombat series, released in 2011. This arena was originally from Mortal Kombat 2, where the arena takes place in Outworld, where weapons are crafted and there is molten metal in the background that would have been used to make them. A Mortal Kombat dragon symbol hangs in the center of the Armory. Composed by Dan Fortin once again, this is Armory. And that was Armory from Mortal Kombat, which was released in 2011. Next is Street Fighter EX. Developed by Arika and published by Capcom in 1996, the Street Fighter EX series is a spin-off of the iconic Street Fighter and was the first game in the series to feature 3D polygon graphics. This is also my favorite Street Fighter in the series because the game had a lot of new characters that not only looked great in design-wise, but they were also fun to play as well. The game featured full-motion video endings similar to the Tekken series. The themes are predominantly jazz with rock and electronic dance music elements. The first song we're going to be listening to is Amusementive Crimes. This arena takes place in a theme park resembling Universal Studios, with various Easter eggs in the background that can be seen, such as Death Wish and Full House. Amusements and Crime is also the theme of one of my favorite characters introduced in the EX series, Skullomania. Composed by Shinji Hosoi, this is Amusements of Crimes. That was Amusements of Crimes. Up next is Garnet Sky. This arena takes place in a small town in Mexico, and is also the theme for another EX character named Cracker Jack. Cracker Jack, or C-Jack, has similar uppercuts and hooks to another classic Street Fighter character, Balrog. But he also wields a baseball bat, which is another one of his more unique moves, where he bats the opponent across the screen. A little trivia is that his outfit is based on the late Michael Jackson attire. Composed by Ayako Saso, this is Garnet Sky. and that was Garnet Sky, one of my favorite tracks from the Street Fighter EX series. Up next is God Hands. God Hands is the theme for one of the more iconic antagonists in the Street Fighter series, Akuma. Akuma is a hidden character that can only be unlocked if certain criteria or objectives are accomplished by the player in the game. This is also another great track. Composed by Shinji Hosoi, this is God Hands. And that was God Hands from Street Fighter EX. Now, this is going to be a very special episode, as I mentioned earlier. So we're going to be doing a special reviews on the run segment called Versus, where Joseph and I will review and compare fighting games that we played. So I'll be going first. I'll be reviewing Mortal Kombat Complete Edition or Mortal Kombat for the PlayStation Vita. Now, although some would argue that it never left in the first place, it's really easy to take a look at Mortal Kombat and say Mortal Kombat is back. Mortal Kombat on the PlayStation Vita is a fully customized experience for even the most hardcore Mortal Kombat fan. The developers at NetherRealm Studios kept a lot of the qualities and quantities that made the latest installments so successful in the consoles and tailored them perfectly to the Vita system. The fighting mechanics are simple enough for players to pick up the controller and start playing, but at the same time adding a lot of depth with the actual system by introducing enhanced special moves and devastating X-rays that deals with big damage. The game provides a decent tutorial mode that teaches the player the fundamentals of Mortal Kombat, as well as a fatality trainer that allows players to practice their fatalities. Fatalities have always been the calling card of Mortal Kombat, and they're often fantastic in this game. This game includes not only one-on-one fighting, but also a tag team mode that allows players to pick up to 4 players with each other controlling one character. Tag battles add another layer of strategy in the game by adding tag assist moves, where each tag team is given a unique set of tag moves and combos. Considered to be the greatest story mode in a fighting game, Mortal Kombat does not disappoint. The structure of the story mode comes directly from its previous game, Mortal Kombat vs. DC Universe, which was released back in 2008 for the PS3 and the Xbox 360, the very first Mortal Kombat game on the next generation systems. But it goes all the way back to the beginning of the series. The story takes place after the events of Mortal Kombat Armageddon, where Shao Kahn, the Emperor of Outworld, emerges victorious, and a defeated Raiden sends a message back through time that his past self receives in order to protect Earthrealm and change the future. So, according to the developers of Mortal Kombat, they wanted to sort of go about the way of Back to the Future, where they would always change the events during the timeline. So the end result is a tweaked alternate timeline that mostly follows the events of the first 3 Mortal Kombat games. With enough twists, it leads to some shocking moments that involve key characters in the series. The story mode unfolds by swapping from character to character as the story advances. So, for example, in the first chapter of the game, you'll be playing as Johnny Cage, and after 3 or 4 fights, you move on to Sonya Blade. Seamless transitions from cutscene to fight with no load times or stops in the action really make the story mode smooth. That, combined with the unique story mode dialogue and story-specific situations, makes the story mode absolutely outstanding. If you care about the Mortal Kombat storyline, you will love it seeing it unfold in such a well-told way. One of the new features exclusively for the PlayStation Vita is the bonus challenge tower that introduces 150 extra missions that are made to take advantage of the PlayStation Vita system, the accelerometer, and the touchscreen. For instance, one of the challenge tower bonus missions is the touchscreen fatalities. Instead of using the directional buttons and one of the face buttons to perform a fatality, you can use the gestures with the touchscreen. The accelerometer is used in a mini-game called Test Your Balance, where a character is trying to balance on a plank, and if the player fails, there are multiple gruesome deaths. And here's a little bit of a hint for you guys. If you get a trophy for viewing all the deaths, so you should basically just kill yourself on purpose when you're playing that particular Test Your Balance minigame. The game runs at 60 frames per second with dynamic backgrounds and lighting effects, but however, there were a few consolations that happened in order to ensure the fast frame rate, namely in the image quality of the character models. While the game looks great in motion, a little closer look reveals that the characters look jagged, blocky, and not as detailed as their console counterparts. The online functionality on the PlayStation Vita version is limited, as the only options available for online are ranked battles, player battles, and private battles. The King of the Hill modes, as well as the tag battles, are not available on online or ad hoc, which is a bit of a disappointment. There is, however, a leaderboard system which allows players to see who is the top of the list in the world. Now, before I move on to my final score of Mortal Kombat Complete Edition or the Vita version, let's move on to Joseph, where he'll be reviewing Blaze Blue.
Welcome back. This was your Midnight Cup of Joe here, and I'm going to be reviewing Blaze Blue. Starting with the Calamity Trigger, the series began with Calamity Trigger, went on to Continuum Shift, and coming in the next couple months will be Chromosphere, which in this case is going to be a PlayStation 3 exclusive, while the other ones were as well on the PlayStation Vita and the Xbox 360. Gameplay-wise, it's a 2D visual effects two-player game. It's not really a tag match in this situation. But starting with the first Continuum Shift, because there was 3 reiterations of the same exact game. That one was going with the different reiterations, it progressively got easier, at least CPU-wise, because they changed the difficulty from hell, as they called it, all the way down to now it's beginner, as the normal failsafe for the CPU. The biggest advantage to this game is the story mode. It's a little different than the MK version, where you choose which character you want to be doing the story mode for, and you have multiple endings, one of them being the gag reel. You have the alternate dimension ending as well as the intended ending, which then once you finish all those, you get the true ending, which is the combination of all the other characters put into one spot to seeing how it all comes to an end. One way to see if you've never been introduced to any of the Blaze Blue, or as they call it, Blade Blue, with the silent Z for some apparent reason, you can also check out their anime, which is Blade Blue Alternate Memory. Unfortunately, right now it's only dubbed in Japanese, but they do have the subtitles for those that aren't as fluent in the Japanese dialect. So just a little background for those that are not familiar with anything to do with it. The game begins about 20 years after the first Magic War, which is all about the 6 heroes that are battling the Black Beast, which they end up using a combination of magic and science called Ars Magnus. And later on, you get I'll introduce some of the characters that are most notable for using the Ars Magnus is Terumi, also known as Hazama, as well as the main anti-hero, I guess you can call him, but because his brother is also considered the protagonist of it, and for some reason I'm just throwing out the names are just popping right out there. So I know Ragna, of course, is the anti-hero. They call him the Blood Edge because he goes around killing all these individuals, but it's more like they do like a propaganda game because there's a organization called the Librarium, which end up taking control after the Black Beast left, and saying that since they are the ones that helped to take down the Black Beast, you should listen to them because they know best. And more simply, the organization is a simpler name for them, or actually the more complex name of them is the Novius Orbius Librarium, or just simply the NOL, because that's how they refer to each other. And because of all that the NOL has been did to, because they basically were controlling the individuals and all the citizens as almost like tyrants. So that began the second war of magic between the individuals who did use magic against the people who use science, and end up killing millions of citizens, and the tyranny just further ensued, which eventually led to where Ragna came into play, where she says enough's enough, and he used the power of the Black Beast, which he didn't know originally, but he ended up using the power of the Black Beast after he lost his arm in a battle against his brother. And further on, if you go into the series, you end up seeing the introduction of both their sisters, Ragna and I'm just totally losing the other brother's name. I can't. I'm sorry, but you'll have to go and check out the show in order to find out the names to the other characters. But all in all, it's a very elaborate game. Has a good gameplay. There's many different options. Going on this second reader, I currently played the first and third reiteration of the continuing shift. The first, like I said, it was more difficult, but also there's a lot less options other than the difficulty. There, with the third, they end up seeing all the problems that was associated with the game. So like there's a couple of little bugs. Obviously the difficulty being one of them. Obviously I can't go run back to that. But also the introduction to 4 more characters, as well as there's one exclusive that no matter which game you get, once you beat the story mode, you get the character known as Mew, which is the ultimate form, or limited form as they call it, which also goes into more depth that all the characters have in a limited form, which is basically just more stronger attacks, as well as there's also more other color variations, and in some cases whole new characters for the unlimited forms. So with that in mind, I believe we should move on to our scoring of each game.
Yeah, but before that, I believe, because I was watching Joe play Blaze Blue Continuum Shift, and one of the mechanics that I saw towards the end of a match is when characters can actually utilize a distortion finish. Maybe you could go about and talk about that.
Like most games, they have special moves, which in this case they refer to them as well, they're basically distortion finishes is one way to if you're just about to finish the match, you have to have so many cells of your strength power, or if I'm going to relate to MK versus DC, the rage bar.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's so many bars, and then you could end up doing your distortion finish, which is more like a cutscene at the end. But the ultimate is which is very difficult, is called the astral finish, which you have to have you have to win 2 matches in a row, as well as have your bar full, and their health has to be only 1/8 left, and yours has to be 3/8 left. If you have 4/8, guess what? You can't do it.
Right.
Or if you want to go more accurately, 1/2. But nonetheless, so that's a very interesting part of it, that you could be playing it for a whole year and may not do one astral finish, and it's which also adds to the replay value that you want to do all the attacks. Or if you do, you want to check all the different characters, their unlimited forms, and
yeah, it's really good that the fact that every single character is unique, and every single character has their own unique astral finish or distortion finish. So, Joseph, what would you give Blaze Blue, or Brei Blue, as it's called in Japan? What would you give it a score out of? Like, what would you rate it?
If I had to break it down, I would say the first reiteration of Continuum Shift would be an 8 out of 10.
8 out of 10. While
the third, I would have to bring it up to a 9, because there's 3 other there's more features that were put onto there, such as there's a tower mode, which is different than the Mortal Kombat challenge tower, because in that there you go up in level as you progress. So you can go up to 99 to begin with, and you go up to 999, and then 99,999. So it easily progresses as far as you go.
Right.
As well as there's more training options in the third one, and then there's also the challenge. It's called challenge mode, which in the first and the third, the biggest difference is the difficulty. It's on hell mode in the first, and beginner in the third. And
so, what would you give that iteration?
So that one, I gave you that one a 9.
A 9 out of 10. Well, for me, I'll give Mortal Kombat for the Vita a 9 out of 10. Basically, the only problems with the game were the graphics weren't that great, and the online modes were very, very limited. But what would you give Mortal Kombat?
I think if I had to go with anything, I would say 8.5.
8.5. I'll give Blaze Blue a 7 out of 10 because, for one, if you're not really into those anime kind of games, you're probably not going to enjoy it as much. And if you're not really into the whole 2D fighting mechanics where the moves are too difficult to pull off, then you probably won't enjoy Blaze Blue. So that wraps up tonight's show. It's been a very, very great show once again. Have a good night, everybody. This is Noah signing off, and
Midnight Cup of Joe.
Good night, everybody. Take care.